The situation is very tense. Two prisoners shot.
From the preliminary reports, it does show that they might have used that firelighter to spark the fire.
And I want to respect Kutama. I'd rather die.
Last month, the American-run Kutama-Sinthumule Correctional Centre in Limpopo was cast into the spotlight after a fire erupted and gutted parts of the facility. 3 inmates died during the fire. Inmates at Kutama told Eyewitness News that they started the fire after submitting a memorandum to prison management and the Department of Correctional Services officials on July 27th. Eyewitness News delved further into the memorandum and found disturbing allegations of a dysfunctional healthcare system, assault and torture, food nutrition issues, and sodomy. Kutama is a maximum security prison which houses 3,024 high-risk offenders, where majority are serving life sentences. Initially, the inmates gave prison officials 14 days to respond to their grievances, but shortly after submitting the document, it is alleged that those whose names were listed on the memorandum were called in by prison management and victimized. This resulted in inmates rioting. Inmates used a communal lighter attached to a wall in the courtyard of Green Block to start the fires. One prisoner told Eyewitness News that they ran from cell to cell lighting foam mattresses. Most of the inmates have since been transferred to other facilities. Justice Minister Ronald Lamola told Eyewitness News they were aware of the memorandum.
You should also note that by the time when the riot started, the 14 days had not yet lapsed. The department had already appointed a team investigating, and the inmates were aware, even from internally, that there is a process to investigate the allegations that were contained in the memorandum.
Glenys Merriday of Exclusive Mediators, a non-profit organization which assists inmates with escalating their grievances to the relevant departments, is calling on the Department of Correctional Services to release the CCTV surveillance footage on the day of the fire. Jackson Hadebe and Siyabonga Nkululeko Zongane are 2 inmates believed to have been shot during the commotion following the fire.
They were shot in the back as they were running away from the fire. So they were shot, they were helpless. As they were running, they were being shot. DCS is not willing to assist them with any funeral arrangements or compensation for what they had to pay.
The prison was constructed in 2002 and is operated, maintained and financed by the American corrections company, the GEO Group. Its 25-year concession contract with the Department of Correctional Services expires in 2027 and will not be renewed, according to Lamola. Kutama is the second privately run prison in South Africa after the notorious Mangaung Correctional Centre in Bloemfontein, operated by British multinational private security company G4S, and where Facebook rapist Thabo Bester escaped from in May last year. In their memorandum, inmates further allege they are forced to buy food from the prison kitchen, with a piece of steak, chicken or lamb chops costing them between 40 to 45 rand, which they must pay for themselves. This, despite the concession contract between the Department of Correctional Services and the South African Custodial Management, a subsidiary of the GEO Group, stating that inmates should be served with nutritional meals. An October 2022 parliamentary report by the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services noted that Kutama has a daily spend of 412 Rand and 19 cents per offender for food, detention and clothing, equating to almost 450 million Rand annually. In comparison to other prisons, Mangaung Correctional Centre spends 435 Rand and 44 cents, while state-run facilities across the country spend 385 Rand per offender per day. Inmates claim they are often served with polony, pap, Viennas and hard-boiled eggs. A former prison warden who worked at Kutama for 15 years and spoke to Eyewitness News anonymously says the prison management are profit-orientated.
From 2002, they've been issuing prisoners nutritional food. Like the prisoner during supper will get his portion of chicken Sometimes they will also get mincemeat, sometimes they will be getting beef, such things. But these things have changed now. I think the Paloni things, I think it's been 3 years now they've been doing that, and it's not allowed.
He also alleges that because inmates had to pay for food, many were being forced into committing sexual acts to pay for what they wanted to eat.
Offenders find themselves trapped in a state of being prostitutes in order to make ends meet, in order to buy toiletries and other necessities, among other things.
The memorandum notes that inmates depend on antiretrovirals, as many are now infected with HIV and AIDS due to widespread sodomy in the prison. An inmate who has since been transferred to another facility following the fire said the main driver behind sexual deeds were food and drugs. Mary Day says rape was a major issue at Kutama and was not being taken seriously.
New inmates get taken in, and they are basically told, when you are new and you're a young inmate, right? You are going to be the wife to whoever's been here the longest, just so to comfort them, because they've been here forever and a day. So get used to the idea. It's also, inmates are being raped and nothing gets done about it. It takes months before they can even report that case, unless if their family visits and then they tell the family, this is what happened to me, then only the case gets reported to SAPS, South African Police Services. They said yes on numerous times, and then they were told, you need to grow up and you don't have any rights. So stop complaining and just accept it.
Dr. Karen Boysons, a criminology senior lecturer at the University of Pretoria, says prison rape is a disturbing trend happening in all our correctional centres and is an underreported crime, shrouded in secrecy.
The mere fact that inmates refer to it as sodomy shows that they have not been properly informed about the severity and the impact of this crime on the male victim.
In the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services 2021-22 annual report, only 26 cases of prison rape were reported. Boysons believes this is merely the tip of the iceberg.
A further problem compounding the issue of gang rape is the so-called Nyawope boys, who sell their bodies in exchange for sex. Some argue that this is not rape.
Boysons, however, views it as rape because the rapist has the power and control over the drug addict. She says being raped may massively impact the reintegration of an offender. According to an offender, some rehabilitation programs were being managed by inmates.
Those who doesn't want to work, to sit in the office the whole day, and then they give it to prisoners. Even I myself, I was sometimes facilitating the tourism in the subject.
A former employee confirmed that staff were not interested in rehabilitation programs.
So it was easy to manipulate the system, because even if a prisoner didn't attend any program, it was easy for him maybe to pay the facilitator so that he could write his name so that he would go and get a certificate at the end.
In the memorandum, inmates allege they are not receiving medical care when needed.
Medical issues where you request to see the doctor, will see the doctor after 7 months.
They would segregate inmates, put them in they call it a dry room, whereby they would now assault this person. They would beat him up into a pulp. The person is then left there for days before he gets medical attention.
And I won't go back to Kutama. I'd rather die.
Why would you say you'd rather die than go back to Kutama?
Right now, I'm a little bit relieved. That thing of those men in prison and all those things fighting each other, that's stampede amongst the inmates. That thing makes me, man, I've lost my mind a little bit because I've been there for quite some time. I don't want to lie.
The South African Custodial Management referred all questions regarding allegations contained in the memorandum to the Department of Correctional Services, as contractually they are not permitted to grant any interviews to the media or press. Concerns around prison management at Kutama date back to the early 2000s. In December 2009, 2 inmates escaped from prison custody: Chico Naibe, a Zimbabwean national, and Johannes Antonio Koza, a Mozambican national. They were serving life sentences for various crimes including murder, robbery, and rape. According to the Department of Correctional Services, they escaped through a window after cutting through the frame using a hacksaw blade. They used clothing to jump over the high-security perimeter fence. Sources claim the electric fence was switched off on the day. Naibe was rearrested, but Khoza remains at large.
We were not entirely happy. That's why if you go through our records, you will find out that there are penalties that we have imposed on the management, and those penalties are governed by the contract on different transgressions that the management would have found themselves having committed. The issue of the escape, there was a penalty that was meted out to the contractor on. The escapes, when they happen, we obviously open a case with South African Police Services. We also do our investigations ourselves. And at the moment, the police are still investigating, and we hope that that offender will be brought back.
Mary Day says while prisoners may have committed crimes, they still needed to be treated humanely.
These inmates, yes, they committed the crime, so therefore they now need to pay the time. They are incarcerated. They are incarcerated with the hope, I'm saying with the hope, because it's not happening, that they are being rehabilitated so that they can be integrated again into society. And remember, this is a father, it's a brother, it's a child to someone. They are also loved. They are loved ones to a family out there that we don't know. You do not know what tomorrow holds. You can be in that same situation and then also crying out for help. Kutama is not a prison. Kutama should be locked up, and nobody should be incarcerated at Kutama.